Hey Bethlehem, this is Pastor Paul, and you know this past Sunday we continued on with our sermon series in the book of Galatians called Living in Grace. And Galatians is probably the first letter that the Apostle Paul wrote. And he's writing that to churches that he established on his first missionary journey in the province of Galatia. Galatia is a Roman province. And these churches, rather than being made up of mostly Jewish Christians, which so far up until this time, the church consisted mostly of Jewish Christians, people who had a background in God's covenant with Abraham and the covenant with Israel at Mount Sinai and the law. But now these people are coming in. They don't have any of that background. They don't have any of that understanding. Paul goes and he preaches to them the gospel. Now, for Paul, the gospel is this. And this is what gospel means. The gospel means the good news about the kingdom. And so for Paul, to put this within this religious context, the gospel is the good news about God's kingdom. And this means that Paul is preaching that through the life, the death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, God's kingdom is breaking into this world, that we're being rescued from sin, that God's justice, that through Jesus, God is going to make everything right, and that through Jesus, God is creating one new people made up of both Jews and Gentiles. This is Paul's gospel. This is the gospel that Paul says he received from Jesus, that's been approved by the apostles in Jerusalem. This is what he is teaching. And he starts off the text that we looked at, first Galatians chapter 1, verses 6 through 10, by saying, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that you would leave this gospel. You were so excited to accept it. And Paul goes into giving us 3 warnings. And the first warning is, don't believe a different gospel. Now, here's the gospel, Paul says. Don't believe anything else. Don't believe something that has things added to it, where you have to do this or do that. No, you simply have to believe in Jesus Christ and follow after him. He says, don't preach a different gospel. Don't teach a different gospel. Paul says, hey, anybody who teaches a different gospel is cursed. And that word cursed means to be set apart for God's destruction. So Paul has some harsh words for those who are adding to or taking away from the gospel and muddying its waters. No, Paul says, keep this simple. Keep this to be the good news about God, God's kingdom, that what God is doing through the person of Jesus. And the third warning he gives is, don't seek the approval of people. Seek the approval of God. Who do we want to approve of us? One of the complaints is that Paul is seeking. He's preaching this message because he's seeking the approval of people. And Paul says, no, if that's what I'm doing, then I just go along with what everybody else is teaching. Because then I wouldn't have these conflicts. This wouldn't matter. Paul says, no, I seek the approval of God. And that's why I'm preaching this gospel, because this is what God has given me to preach. And so we have to make sure that as we make disciples, we're seeking God's approval and not the approval of the world around us. So our big idea from Sunday is the gospel is at the heart of everything we do. The gospel is at the heart of everything that we do. It's the reason we exist. It's the reason God puts us here, to proclaim the gospel, to live out the gospel, to bring other people into God's kingdom. And our challenge this week is this: to pray and ask God about your job in sharing the gospel. What is it that God has for you to do? Because we all play a part in making disciples, sharing the gospel in this world. What is it that God wants you to do? Hey, Bethlehem, I'm glad that you're able to join us. Remember, you can give online by going to our website, BethlehemChurchAustin.com. and following the give tab. We appreciate your generosity. We appreciate you staying with us. And let me know if there's anything I can do for you, any ways I can pray for you. Love you guys, and we'll see you on Sunday. God bless.